following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFNG coming to you with part 4 of my review of the Piranacon Seacons. And today in part 4 we are going to be taking a look at what I originally, before I started having interest in getting the Piranacon Seacons, was the figure that I thought would be the rarest and most hard to find of them all. This is the most unique bodied version of the Seacons, and it is Nautilator, or Lobclaw, as he's known in Japan. Now, the reason why I thought Nautilator was going to be the most hard to find of the Seacons is because he's the only Seacon unofficially who is a unique bodied Seacon. And what I mean by that is that the original Generation 1 Seacons, and Takara Tomy did the same here with the Generation Selects versions of the Seacons. The Piranacon Seacons were repainted into another combiner team of Seacons for the Transformers Beast Wars 2nd series in 1998, 10 years after the G1 Seacons were released in 1988. And I actually have the Beast Wars 2nd Seacons, the Generation Selects versions. They're in this huge brown box that you've seen in most of my reviews. Once I'm through with Piranacon, I'm going to finally get those opened up and review them. But what Takara Tomy did when re-releasing the Seacons for the Beast Wars 2nd line, rather than including all 6 of the Seacons, they decided only 5 of them would be necessary for the new Seacon combiner featured in Transformers Beast Wars 2nd. And as a result of the decision to have only 5 of the Seacons, Nautilator here was the one Seacon who was not repainted into the new combiner for Beast Wars 2nd, which was known as God Neptune. So, yeah, Nautilator is the only unique bodied Seacon due to the fact that he's not a member of God Neptune. But before I got all 6 of the Piranacon Seacons off of eBay from a seller, I didn't think I was going to ever find the other Piranacon Seacons off of eBay at a decent price. And so what I did before I purchased Piranacon off of eBay is I actually got an individual copy of Nautilator to combine with God Neptune off of eBay. And so as a result of that, I actually have 2 copies of Nautilator, and the first one that I purchased a month before I got all of the Piranacon Seacons at once actually came inside the box. So Nautilator is the only one of the 6 Seacons whose box I have since I got a second copy. So this is the boxes of the other Generation Select Seacons all look just like this one. So this is the outermost box showing that the Seacons are a part of Takara Tomy's exclusive Transformers Generation Selects line. It's a black box with white letters on it. So here's the Transformers Generation Selects logo, Takara Tomy exclusive. You will not see Hasbro's logo anywhere on here. Here, this is just a wraparound cover sheet. There's a outline photo of Nautilator. There's his Japanese name that Takara Tomy gave him of Lobclaw, due to the fact that he transforms into a mechanical lobster. And I don't know if I've said this with the other Seacons so far, but as far as the Seacons having different names, which ones do I enjoy personally more, the Hasbro or Takara Tomy names? With this Seacon right here, the lobster one, I definitely prefer his Hasbro name of Nautilator over his Takara Tomy name of Lobclaw. Same thing with the other Seacons who were given different names. I prefer Snaptrap's name over his Takara Tomy name of Turtler. I definitely prefer Scalar's Hasbro name over his Takara Tomy name of Decepticon Gulf. Sea-Wing, even though I do like his Hasbro name more than his Takara Tomy name of Kraken. That's Sea-Wing, I believe, is the one where both his Hasbro and Takara Tomy names are they're pretty close to each other in terms of coolness, for lack of better vocabulary. But yeah, with the Lobster Seacon, I definitely prefer his Hasbro name of Nautilator over his Takara Tomy name of Lobclaw. So removing this outer sheet, neat here's you got some disclaimers from Takara Tomy here on the bottom. Over here on the back, you've got warning labels. Shout out to MGO316. Sad Pac-Man. This is a Japanese warning that there's small parts that could be a choking hazard for young children. Let me see if there's an age disclaimer on here. Oh yeah, Takara Tomy recommends that only people above that age buy these Transformers figures. But yeah, here is the inner box. It's similar to the Transformers Generation Selects line from that Hasbro released during the War for Cybertron trilogy, where it's mostly brown cardboard box with black letters on it. But yeah, Takara Tomy, they didn't try to go for that, what Hasbro did, where you have that spray-painted black Autobot on the box. But yeah, opening it up, there's the Transformers Generation Selects logo. They're on the inside of the lid. And whoever previously owned this version of Nautilator, they opened him up and transformed him to make sure that it wasn't moving around all over the place. So it's taped down everything. But yeah, there is what Nautilator looks like, and when he's still inside his box, you've got his accessory pieces on there. There you got the instruction sheet underneath. And yes, I just wanted to show that off. Now, in real life, the reason why Nautilator wasn't repainted with the other Piranacon Seacons into the God Neptune Seacons was because Takara Tomy just didn't see a need to repaint all 6 Seacons, and Nautilator ended up being the one who was left out. But when the Generation Selects versions of the Seacons were being released, within Transformers Fiction, Takara Tomy released a pack-in comic book explaining that the reason why Nautilator did not join the God Neptune Seacons is because right after he did technically become a part of the God Neptune Seacons, and he changed his name when he took on the God Neptune Seacons paint job of being mostly ivory white with gold highlights versus the Piranacon Seacons paint job of mostly turquoise with black highlights. He was known by his Takara Tomy name of Lobclaw, and when he took on the God Neptune paint job, he changed his name from Lobclaw to Lobhammer. But right after undergoing the new paint job to become a member of God Neptune, an enemy that the Seacons were fighting basically obliterated Lobhammer and destroyed him, and then his lifeless body was taken away, leaving only the Seacons with only 5 teammates. So within Transformers Fiction, that's the reason why Nautilator was left out of the God Neptune Seacons. But because as Takara Tomy within that pack-in comic book made Nautilator a member of God Neptune, what I'm going to try and do in the coming days is this extra copy of Nautilator that I'm going to try and see if I can do something I haven't done in ages and put my customizing skills to the test and see if I can make my own custom Lobhammer figure to give the God Neptune Seacons 6 teammates. But yeah, let's bring back focus here on Nautilator. So, officially, because Lobhammer was never given an action figure and wasn't even an official character until that pack-in comic was released with the God Neptune Seacons last year in 2021. Nautilator is the /Lobclaw. He remains the only unique-bodied Seacon around. That's one of the reasons why I thought he was going to be the most hard to find of the Seacons to come across. But surprisingly, he is not. Nautilator is just as easy to find on eBay and other websites selling the deluxe class Seacons as he's easy to find as C-Wing and Scalar. The 2 hardest to find Seacons are the last 2 that we will be reviewing after Nautilator, which are Tentakill and Overbite, and that's because Takara Tomy released the God Neptune Seacons in 3 groups of 2. Snaptrap and Scalar were released in Wave 1 of the Piranacon Seacons, and then C-Wing and Nautilator were released in Wave 2 of the Piranacon Seacons, and then Tentakill and Overbite were released in the 3rd and final wave, and apparently the 3rd wave of the Piranacon Seacons. Takara Tomy didn't manage to distribute it as much as they had the first two waves, so despite being the unique bodied member of the Seacons, Nautilator is not the most hard to find of them all. That said, here is what Nautilator looks like with all of his accessory pieces attached to him. He comes with four accessory pieces. He's got this axe weapon, which forms the base of Piranacon's trident. There on his underside is the best place to store it. And then he's got, of course, the combiner hand. And right here, his third accessory piece is his laser gun. It's the exact same laser gun that was given to Sea Wing. The only difference is that, unlike Sea Wing's laser gun, which had some of the turquoise or aqua blue paint applied to it, Nautilator's is unpainted black plastic. And then his fourth accessory piece actually forms a part of his beast mode, and it is the lobster tail. So I really enjoy how the designers at Takara Tomy went with this, where just like in real life, when you're eating lobster, you pluck off the tail, and it's not edible. It's not an edible part. Nobody eats the tail of the lobster. But yeah, just like Scalar, Nautilator's lobster tail, you rotate the centerpiece around and it becomes a laser gun for him. Since it is a part of his beast mode, this is the one accessory piece that I recommend holding on to if you ever decide to get Nautilator and add him to your Transformers collection. Since he is a mechanical lobster and not an actual lobster, if you find a copy of Nautilator that doesn't have the lobster tail attached, it still does a fairly decent job of looking like a lobster, but having the tail attached there just goes the extra mile in helping him be a robot in disguise. Yeah, overall I do enjoy how Nautilator was designed. And just like Scalar, he has an open mouth gimmick, and Takara Tomy painted the inside of his mouth red. And there he's got nice bright yellow paint here on his eyes. Just like the other deluxe Seacons, his Decepticon logo ends up on the forehead of his beast mode. And Nautilator, just like Scalar, he's mold mates with the mold that was originally used by Power the Primes Rippersnapper, but Nautilator has almost the exact same type of claws that were used on Power the Primes Decepticon Blot. So even though the original version of this mold was Power the Primes Rippersnapper, Nautilator is actually more a retool of Decepticon Blot. But yeah, overall, I do enjoy how his lobster claws were designed. There are some product photos showing that you can get the lobster claws at different angles. I like to put them at this angle so they're level with his legs, just like an actual lobster. And one thing to note about Nautilator is this is the main problem that he has, as the lobster eggs themselves, they're all one single piece that hinges up and down due to his transforming him into his various combined modes. But if you look right here where the lobster legs attach to him, they don't actually tab into place. It's just friction that's holding them in there, and as a result, as you can see right here, the lobster legs actually don't attach securely at all. And they can pop off at a moment's notice. It's the trick to get them to stay locked in place is on this piece right here. There's a swivel joint right here that it's attached to. You can see the metal pin on the one here on the other side. And so the trick to get the lobster legs to lock in place is to angle this ever so slightly upward so that this thing sits more or comfortably in that tiny little groove, and there's a greater chance of friction holding them in place. But yeah, if you try to mess around with Nautilator's lobster legs and get them to actually walk around or make it look like they're moving, those legs are going to attach and flop up all over the place. So it's just it's a very minor gripe, but it's one that I believe prevents Nautilator from having the best beast mode out of the Seacons. And unfortunately, the lobster legs are where much of his articulation in lobster mode is. You can rotate the legs up and down like that. But again, as you saw, I was having to hold on to it with my thumb to prevent them from going around. The head can angle upward and downward slightly, but I think it's actually just disconnecting, acting like that. And then, of course, you can angle the lobster claws outward if you want. You can have them angled down as well. Unfortunately, due to how the lobster claws sit in this space right here between the lobster head and the torso, you can't really point them outward without the head detaching. So it is a tad disappointing that articulation on the lobster claws are limited. But one thing you can do is you can have the claws open and close, so you can make it look like Nautilator's grabbing onto things. The only problem with that is if you try and bring the claw completely outward, I don't know how well I'm going to get a good angle to show it off, but if you point the claws outward, the inside of the claws rotate to form the robot mode hands, so if you're not too careful, you could end up transforming the hand out like that. But despite the flaws with the lobster eggs relying on friction to hold them in play, I do enjoy how Nautilator came out, and he is a pretty lengthy lobster when he's transformed into beast mode. I don't have any size comparisons to do him with, but yeah, I will say that he is a pretty decent sized deluxe class figure. So again, there he is with the open mouth gimmick. So without further delay, let's get Nautilator transformed and take a close look at him in his robot mode. Alright, and so here is Nautilator transformed into his robot mode. And as far as the transformation between back and forth between his robot mode and his beast mode, it almost feels like a combination of Rippersnapper and Blot. And yes, officially the lobster legs just hang off the back of his robot mode legs as back kibble. But if you want to, but if you're worried that they might get in the way of things, what you can do is have the lobster legs folded around like this. It's not that much better, but it does make his legs not have any kibble dangling off the back of them. And then for his handheld weapon, you have the choice of either his regular laser gun or the lobster tail laser gun. And one nice thing is that there's a 5mm peg here on Nautilator's back, and what you can do is you can plug the lobster tail there on the back and have it stored there, and you can have it look like the lobster tail forms a part of Nautilator's backpack, like with a rocket booster on the back of him. But yeah, here overall, Nautilator is pretty decent looking member of the Seacons. So here he is holding his laser gun. Here he is holding his axe weapon, and the axe forms the base of the trident for Piranacon. And yeah, overall, I do enjoy how he came out. There's a close-up of his head sculpt. Oh, it's pretty decent looking head sculpt there. It is on a ball joint, so it can rotate left and right 360 degrees. It can angle downward by about 1mm, but not upward. He has ball jointed shoulders, and unlike Ewing, who we looked at in the previous review, Nautilator's backpack is thin enough that the arms can rotate forward and backward 360 degrees. He's no bicep swivel, but there are elbow joints there are ball joints at the elbow. So Nautilator does get a pretty decent amount of articulation in his arms. Moving the lobster tail gun, and he can there's a swivel joint in the waist, so it can go 360 degrees clockwise and counterclockwise. But that's also due to the fact that the waist joint ends up acting as the bicep swivel for Piranacon's arms. Nautilator, unfortunately, because there's a slight elevated edge there to his hips, he can't do a full split. The legs can only go out that far. Swivel joint at the thigh, hinged knees. He's no ankle articulation, so there's no articulation in the feet. And because of how the feet are angled like this, you do have to get Nautilator into a sprawl-legged pose. in robot mode. But overall, I do enjoy the look of Nautilator and how he came out. Aim out. And I do believe that right here for the lobster legs, the official transformation where they hang off the back of him, I think that's goofier looking than the unofficial transformation where they're here on the side of his legs, but getting them transformed back into the official position. Overall, Nautilator is pretty impressive looking, and yeah, I just really enjoy how he came out. Aim out. So without further delay, we will show Nautilator off in all of his combined modes and wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is Nautilator transformed into his leg mode. Egg mode. Again, it's pretty much the same aim as the other Seacons so far. The lobster head ends up acting as a knee pad for Piranacon. And then you have the lobster tail acting as a shin guard. And then, of course, the lobster legs just hang off the back. So, yeah, pretty impressive looking for having the exact same transformation as all the other limb bots from the Prime Wars trilogy. So this is it as a left leg, and again, the only difference for the Seacons being a left or right leg for Piranacon is where the robot mode thumb is pointed, since it acts as a side heel. So here is Nautilator as a right leg, and then to get him transformed into target master mode, you just take the foot off. Off like so. For the Seacons, going from leg mode to target master mode is the quickest and easiest. They're the two quickest modes to go back and forth between. So take that out, put the lobster tail here on the end. And one thing to note is that when you try and when you're rotating the combiner peg with Nautilator's head around, the head does bump into this double hinge joint that the robot mode head, what I meant to say, bumps into this double hinge joint here that the lobster head is attached to. So you do have to maneuver some finagling around to get it to line up properly. Yeah, trying to see if I got that right. That's close enough. I'm trying to use some official product photos from Takara Tomy as a reference to make sure I'm doing it correctly. So here is Nautilator transformed into target master mode for Piranacon. And this is true for all of the Seacons. The target master mode is basically the leg mode, just in a vertical position instead of a horizontal one. And unfortunately, just like the lobster legs in lobster mode, the claws of the lobster mode here in combined mode, there isn't really much for them to go into if you don't line it up properly. There are two little ports here, and they're designed to peg here into these square-shaped bits. It's on the back of the head, but again, they don't like to stay pegged in place too much. And again, just like in other modes, you can, if you want to have the lobster leg slipped in a different position, if you want to make Nautilator look like a more cohesive laser gun, untarget master for Piranacon. So, actually getting the combiner hand to attach. It doesn't really want to shove in place too well, but yeah, there is what Nautilator looks like in target master mode. Pretty impressive looking. Going by Takara Tomy's official product photos, you're supposed to plug the laser gun underneath the lobster tail gun. And Nautilator transformed into a double barrel can. And target master for Piranacon. So yeah, overall, I do enjoy how Nautilator came out. As I said earlier in the video, he is the only unique bodied of the Seacon. And so he is somewhat sought after by collectors. But as I said, since I was able to get 2 copies of Nautilator, one for Piranacon and another that I'm going to customize for God Neptune. He can be found at a price that is somewhat similar to Scalar and Sea-Wing. So yeah, overall, I do highly recommend you get Nautilator if you can. Out of all the Seacons, I highly recommend getting Nautilator first, because I just can't shake the feeling that even though Overbite and Tentakill, the next Seacons we will be looking at in this Piranacon review series are the most hard to find, I just can't shake the feeling that Nautilator might potentially become the rarest of the Seacons to find one day. Thank you guys all so much. This has been the TFN. This has been part 4 of our review of the Piranacon Seacons. We have looked at Nautilator. And thank you guys all so much for watching. Stay tuned for parts 5, 6, and 7. And until next time, you guys, stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.